So today we are going to talk about importing project between Gerrit servers. And the first poll is going to be how many Gerrit servers you have. So first of all, if you are on Slido, you should see a poll coming up. When you have more than one, you can say 2 to 5, and typically I say that's the number of servers that people have. And just one thing, server ID, this is a concept I haven't explained now before, but server ID is a specific entry you got in config to define a domain, right? So if you got multiple servers with the same server ID, it means they have the same content. They have the same users, they have the same projects, and so on. But when you got multiple server IDs, it means that one Gerrit setup is used by either a team of people, another setup is used by another team of people, and so on. Basically, 33% were saying they got only one server. Another 33% we got from 2 to 5. But we see people, they have 2 to 5 servers with different server IDs. Some of them go more than 5, either with same server ID or different server ID. I'm really happy that there is nobody that has more than 64. Okay, so what's the agenda for today? So first of all, we'll see what was the situation, how we were importing projects in, let's say, in the era pre-NoteDB, in Gerrit 2X when we were working with ReviewDB. I know that some of you guys are still on ReviewDB, and we'll just, let's say, recap how we were doing this stuff. And then we will talk about the Gerrit importer plugin. So this was written by SAP. Then we'll see what Gerrit did to make things easier. And I actually didn't remember, but this place is special because this is the place where Dave Borowitz announced to the world that NoteDB was done. And you will see that something was missing, right? And I found actually the commit where Dave Borowitz say, I just forgot to do this one, but yeah, we can do it later. And then we'll see, let's say, how NoteDB was supposed to make things better, but it didn't. And we'll see why. And luckily, we'll see what we can do now in 3.7. The last but not least, I will share with you also some preview of what has been discussed in the ESC on the plans beyond 3.7. Gerrit 2X. So when I'm talking about Gerrit 2X, I'm talking about all the versions before Gerrit 2.15, not 16, 15, because NoteDB actually was introduced in 2.15, not in 2.16. The URL was looking something like this. So when we were going to the Gerrit GUI, for some of you, the Gerrit GUI still looks like that. You had the host name, and then there was a bang, and then there was /c/a number. And the change number was the unique identifier of your change. And the reason, the way that Gerrit understood that that was a change, because there was a C. If it was the code, it would have been an R, right? And there were all, we still have, let's say, some kind of legacy stuff related to this. And why was like that? Because actually, the Gerrit architecture was something like this. And again, some of you possibly still have an architecture that is similar to this. So you will notice that basically the hash was identifying that the specific URL was for the GWT UI. And if there wasn't a slash, it was just a C. So if it wasn't a hash, it was just C, it was for the Gerrit backend. But both the backend and the GUI, they needed just one number. There was the change number. And based on the change number, it was going straight into the Git repo. And how Gerrit understood which one was the repo, which one was all the information. It was ReviewDB, a relational database. So there were two tables. One was changes. The second was patch sets. And in those two tables, there were the basic information that Gerrit needed to know. That is the name of the project and the SHA-1. And the ref. And in the repo, actually, you had the specific ref. In this case, is ref changes 0111, and then the SHA-1 associated. As you can see, there was a matching here between the revision number that is here in patch set, revision A79CC06, and the one you had in the repo. That's all about. And actually, many products, they are doing similar to what Gerrit does, including GitHub, they are still organized in this way. So they're basically just a repository with a relational database and a GUI on top, right? Then, of course, importing was a bit of a problem, right? Because importing data in the Git repo was not that difficult, but importing data on the database, it was a bit tricky. It wasn't tricky if the data was the same, because you export the table, import the table, done. But imagine that you needed to consolidate two different databases with conflicting numbers. Imagine that, I don't know, David has set up his own Gerrit. It's very easy to set up. You run Docker, there we go. And Trevor, you're setting up your ones. And your first change number is 1 for David, and the first change number for Trevor is 1. You guys are happy until you get together and say, why don't we work together? They say, who wants to have the number 1? David or Trevor? I want to be the one. No, I want to be the one. So one of the two will need to renumber. And when you need to renumber, the problem is not just one table. So you start with changes. I update the changes table. No, you need to update the patch set. Okay, update the patch set. What about the comments? You need to keep all relational integrity, right? And reference. And then you need to update also the numbers on the repo. Say, yeah, just add more tags. Then you got maybe Jira integration. Then you got Jira that is pointed to the wrong number. Because then, unfortunately, if it was a 404, it would be easy, right? But now you got maybe a Jira issue associated with Trevor that goes into Dave change. And then, oh my gosh, it's going to be a mess. So in the era of 2.x, people were used to migrate only the code, but not the reviews. But of course, it wasn't good enough, right? So then the SAP guys that at a certain point they realized that in the company they had many different Gerrit servers. So possibly the guys that say 2 to 5 are the SAP guys. They needed to consolidate and they needed to kind of do this process over and over again. So they said, instead of doing manually, why don't we write a plugin for doing it, right? So they wrote the importer plugin in SAP. The main purpose was basically doing the process that we mentioned before, so getting Trevor set up and Dave set up, putting that together, but done in a kind of organized and automatic way. And the way they did was very, very smart, because they did not just automatically, but they did it also online. So it means that by running the importer, you could start the import of a project from one server to another server, even if they had different server IDs, even if there were, let's say, conflicting numbers. Still, they didn't resolve the problem of renumbering. So if they had some existing links, that would have been, let's say, a little bit of a problem, because that would have been broken anyway. The good thing they did is that they shared with the community, and they indicated in the documentation the source and the destination of the importer has to be exactly the same version, because they use the REST API. And how the people used it? First, different Gerrit version. I started seeing on the mailing list, okay, I'm importing Gerrit 2.1 projects into Gerrit 2.16 with importer plugin. I got this problem. How can I fix it? So, and another way that they used it is also for replication. I say, that was not designed to do replication. You use the replication plugin, but then you think about it, yeah, how do you replicate reviews? You can't, right? It was really, really powerful, and people loved it. Let's have a look then what we did. So this is exactly the recording of those guys, the AV team that was doing the presentation here, and Dave Borowitz was exactly here, announcing Gerrit 2.15 and NoteDB. That was the timeline on NoteDB, because NoteDB was supposed to solve this problem and say, guys, you don't need any more the Gerrit importer plugin, because you're on NoteDB. You just move the project, your index done. We wanted to make Gerrit simpler, because at the end of the day, NoteDB is just some JSON data into a ref, human readable. Second point, consistent, and this actually has been achieved, because before, if someone would do Control-C during in the middle of a push, you could have left, let's say, ReviewDB inconsistent with the repo. Audit trail, so the database, ReviewDB was not audited. And extensibility, it was designed to be extensible. It's not extensible yet, not DB. And put in new features. And definitely this was achieved, because you saw a lot more features, and migrating to new features is a lot easier in 3.x compared to d.x. But I remember the main focus for Sean, that is the project founder, said, When I board a plane, at that time you couldn't connect on the internet over the plane, and he was traveling a lot. I say, I cannot do reviews on a plane. He was saying, I want to do reviews on my laptop, on my repo, and when I land, I'm just pushing, and the reviews goes to someone else. So basically using the peer-to-peer review model, even with Gerrit. Those were the promises, but in our URL, we had just a change number. So it means that we couldn't understand where to go. So if you see, look at the change number 2. Where do I go? I don't know where is change number 2. And we wanted to get rid of ReviewDB, so where do you get that information? Okay, so we started a specific activity of getting rid of that specific scheme exactly in 2015 at the same time on NoteDB, because the two things, they were designed to go together. Because the main focus was I should go to a repo, get in a ref, get in the metadata, and understand what are the reviews. Okay? A specific comment from Patrick. Patrick Heiser was driving this initiative, and he was saying, yes, so we should get rid of the old URL. The GWT UI was already ported and was not references to the old URL anymore, and we introduced the new URL scheme. And where you see the project name is now in the URL scheme, is there, and it was used by both the front end and the back end. For compatibility reasons, because we knew that people still had the links to the old URL, Gerrit would have done a redirect to the new URL. And with the new URL and NoteDB, we would have not needed ReviewDB anymore, not indexes to do the lookup and nothing else. This was the purpose 5 years ago. Yeah, we're not there yet. So then the point is, okay, then we say, yeah, we migrated to NoteDB. Now I'm getting the repo, I'm putting it on this side, and I run reindex. So I'm going here, so I've got a 216 with a server that is Gerrit 1, 216 with another server that is Gerrit 2. So let me start them up. I'm going to show you the crashing live. So this is the situation with change number 1. So I've got a change on 0. And actually, I'm already in 216 NoteDB. So trust me, there is the project here. And if I go to the second instance, and there we go. That's the second is still number 1. Okay? Running a reindex. I copy just the repo. Exception! Yeah! We did it. So that was the broken promise. Man, we worked for years on NoteDB. I believe Dave Borowitz was like me, sleeping 1 hour a night and firefighting all the time. And when we get there, a nice exception. Also, let's have a look why it didn't work and what we needed to do. The problem is this one. If you have a closer look at NoteDB, you see that the author is not an email, but is a number. It's a number at server ID. And this was coming together with the new legislation of GDPR. When you go to the reviews, then there is just the number. It's just the user 1 million or that server ID. But if I remove the link from this one to the real person, I will never know who is this guy, right? So that's interesting. The account number is 1 million, and that's the server ID. So those were the two things. The account number is used to look up into the old users, so that is the Gerrit account registry and so on. And so the server ID actually is useful because it allows you to understand where this change was initially created, right? Because, of course, NoteDB was designed to allow you to move changes between servers. So at least you know where it was starting from. And the account number is just a generic incremental, so it doesn't give us any trouble. If you look at the code, what code is doing, this is real code even now. If the host that you're running is identical to the server ID that I see on NoteDB, then you parse it. Otherwise, you return none, and the caller is going to throw an exception. So there was basically this if then else in the code. So here, Patrick didn't leave a to-do in the code, but he left it in the commit message. So this is really Dave. Dave, 8th of March 2016, so 6 years ago. So include UID portion NoteDB is a per server specific, identifies with one ID. Eventually, we will need to come up with some mechanism, yeah, for making sure that when this one goes to another server, I just do a lookup through external ID. And I believe nobody picked it up. So I just left it there in the code, in the comment. So it is a kind of unfinished work. So 6 years later, we have done it. So this is 3.7 that has been published, and this is part of the documentation that say this is exactly how it works. So if you have now in 3.7 a specific Gerrit config that is called imported server ID, so you are telling Gerrit that actually this instance is also willing to accept changes that are coming from different server IDs. The second part, it says when, of course, the account needs to be looked up, just do a lookup via external ID, exactly as Dave Borowitz said to do it. Okay? This is exactly in the same way that it was supposed to be. And let's have a look how it works in practice. So exactly the same example that you saw before. Let's see how it behaves in 3.7. The URL will look slightly different in 3.7. 8081, so that's the first one. It's 370. And here also, I did a little bit something more. So here also, I created the same users, and I made sure to create a different type, so I had different account numbers. So Matt is 1 on Gerrit 1, but is account 2 on Gerrit 2. And John is 2 on Gerrit 1, but is account 1 on Gerrit 2. So we got the same identities, but with the numbers shuffled up. Okay? And let's have a look if I do a reindex now on 3.7, and I do the same reindex as before. That is 3.7, done. No stack trace, no exceptions, nothing. So if we go to 3.7 now, so look, this was the first server. If you look at this change was 1, change number 1. This was the second, change number 1. This test repo dupa, change number 1. And this is the consolidated one, we got 2. And this is the 1, and this is still 1. Okay? And they are still, and you still see the right identity, the correct identity. Okay? So that works in 3.7. You may think that job done, yeah, we solved all the problems. Then still on v3.16, how do you look up accounts for imported repo? It might be missing an importing server. Okay, that's interesting, yeah. And that was actually already included in the note from Dave Borowitz. He was saying if the account is missing, we will put a placeholder. And you can do the same here. You can put a placeholder. If in 3.7, if the Gerrit admin did not put any placeholder, it will be the equivalent of the user not set. So it means that you will just see on the GUI that Gerrit doesn't know who is this user. And then if you see that any changes that have user not set, it's very easy to fix. You go, you put a placeholder, and you put what is the identity that you think that guy was, because some of the people left the company. So they cannot log in, right, anymore on the new server. You put a placeholder by external ID, and job done. It's very easy. And you don't need to do any migration and everything. Just you reindex that change that didn't have it, fixed. You don't need, there is absolutely no downtime for doing it. You can do it online. You can do it exactly in the same way you are doing with imported plugin. You can also, let's say, index the changes slowly. If you imported a big project, there's going to be 4 million changes. You don't want to do all at once because you're going to kill your server. You can say, I'm going to do no more than 10 hours. It will take some time, and then it's done. Okay? So let's have a look what is the unfinished work, and then we'll go to more Q&A. Okay, so this is not presentation. This is live. This is 3.7. You can look at the documentation. This is the way it works. It's been reviewed, has been merged, and was really, really a couple lines of code change. So what's the trick? That's the trick. So, and let me go to it directly so you will see. So how Gerrit can understand that a specific user, how Matt knows who is his identity on the other two servers. So Gerrit, as first of all, is not a storage of identity. It doesn't manage identities. But as a repository, it is called all account, all users that contains the accounts. And the accounts, they just point to different identities. So solving this problem is exactly like a user that has multiple accounts on multiple domains. Imagine, for instance, I've got a Google account, I've got a Microsoft account, I have a bank account, and other bank, but it's still me. And the same way, Gerrit is already able to manage different external IDs. And we already use that feature in the OAuth plugin that David Ostrowski developed, right? And we have been using it also for migrating people. Imagine you are using LDAP first, and then you go to SAML. What's the trick? You just add external IDs. And people, when you migrate to SAML, they don't have to re-register again. That's the same identity, right? And basically, I use the same concept. So I introduced in 3.7 the imported external ID type. And if you are of imported external ID type, it's really trivial. You just have account number at server ID, and that's your external ID. It's a simple lookup for Gerrit. You will see if you want to look at the change, it was very small, and you find the account. So instead of throwing an exception, 2 lines of code, done. The user is there, and you continue. If you had still some external system that were using the URL without the project name, they must be really old, but maybe you still have them. Of course, you won't be able to access them in that way. So you will be able only to access the changes that were created locally, but not the imported ones. But these ones, they are not going to conflict with the others. So you're not messing up the existing changes. But the imported ones, they will have to have the project name. So in this case, if I put just one, I will get a 404 because none of them exist, right? But if I put a project name, I found them. And if I create a change number locally that is number 1, with just one, we'll get just the local one, not the imported. The change one could be on test repo 1, on test repo 2. Okay? All works. So what are the limitations? So first of all, we don't have a mapping tool. So you say, okay, what's the tool that I need to run to add those external IDs? We don't have that tool. We are limited to 64 imported server IDs. That's why I was happy that nobody has more than 64. And this is because we made a mistake when we introduced Lucene. So in Lucene, you need to have a document ID. And typically, the best idea is to use a document ID that is not a field in your document because it's not future-proof, because your document structure will change. You will be messing up the IDs. And of course, we did something that you shouldn't do it. We used the change number as document ID. So then we got in trouble. That is, Lucene wasn't working anymore. So what we did is to basically encode the imported server IDs, only the imported server IDs. So the local ones, they are unchanged. But when you import the server IDs and you import changes, we needed to change the document ID in that case. So the imported ones will have a different document ID because we use the 3 most significant bits there. We still allow up to 64 imports of different servers with different server IDs. It allows only 256 million changes. Who has more than 256 million changes in Gerrit? No, not for now. But in master, we will do something better. One thing that's very important, so David Ostrowski did a command to bump the sequences, REST sequences changes. You need to bump that one. Because if your local Gerrit has 10 changes, you're importing one that has 1 million changes, you need to start from 1,000,001 after the import, right? So you need to bump that one. And there are some leftover bugs in the GUI. Casper from the old Gerrit team was changing the GUI for using project name and change number everywhere. And he left a comment in the code, I'm going to leave these reverse lookup as a temporary workaround, but I should get it done. It's not done yet. Yeah, so we have some more work on the GUI. But it's working because it's using both. But if you get into a point where the GUI has just a change number, it may not be able to see the imported ones. Is it possible to deal with conflicting project names? When you got the same project name, no. You need to have a different project name, of course not. And we need to add tools to export account data from the source. Yeah, that's the tool that I'm talking about. And move to the imports account. Yeah, the tooling of creating the external IDs, yes. So way forward. So first of all, we really want to have a complete account federation mechanism in Gerrit. So there is going to be a new design document proposal to do these in a more organized way in Gerrit, not just a reverse lookup on the external ID. That could be done online, offline, we don't know yet. There's going to be a design document of that on master, and everyone will be welcome to give their opinion and proposals. The second thing is another unfinished work. That is the project-specific change number is done, but we have some to-dos. So there are some to-dos on the GUI. So the GUI should never, ever use the change number alone again. So there are a lot of work on the GUI to do that. And also, the sequences cannot be anymore at global level. So each project must have these sequences. That again is a couple of lines of code work, but a lot of testing, of course. And Lucene document ID should be redesigned. My proposal is that let's not make the mistake again to use some fields. Let's use that generic UID. You don't care what is the Lucene document ID. Because when you search for Lucene, you search for the fields of your document. The document ID was always used only for the deletion. So the first thing that I encountered when I fixed the 2 lines of code, the conflicts, I saw that when I was removing a change from the GUI, I was removing the wrong one. Because Lucene was pointing to the wrong one. I say, oh my gosh. Then I did a little bit of deep dive and I say, facepalm, oh, we used it for the document ID. That is used only internally. For you as a user, you don't care about what is the document ID. It's our fault. So we apologize for that.
Basically, is there any disadvantage now from if you have a federated system that's together, making the server IDs different or the same? Is there any argument to keeping them the same now that it supports importing?
So my suggestion is from 3.7 onwards, so if you accept those limitations in 3.7, then of course they're not going to be there in 3.8 anymore. If you accept those ones, it shouldn't matter anymore to be the same or different.
Okay. And regarding groups, how will that work? Because groups are used also to define on the projects what type of access you can have. So you can have users inside groups, and the groups can be created within Gerrit. And then
good
how does that connect?
So one thing that is very important here, we are talking about not identity federation. We are not talking about security federation. We're talking about just importing a project. And basically, when you import the project and the changes, you have to find a local user that already exists in the system, that is already a member of groups, that is already ACLs associated. So it means that if you import a change with a user that is unknown, Gerrit 3.7 doesn't know what to do. Yeah. It means in that case will be a user that is unidentified, so user not set, until you tell the system who is that guy. And it means that that specific user is not able to do anything. So there is no security problem associated because they cannot even log in because it does not exist on the system.
Yeah, it's just the thing is that, for instance, on projects, when you go to the access management, you can say that it is a group that you are putting there. So it's not just individual users, but also groups. Yeah. And you can have the collision with the number, with the group number between them. So that's
so in 3.7, the answer is no, it's not managed yet. So it means that 3.7 doesn't do any group federation or group import, because in that case you will need also to import the groups, not just accounts. But here we don't even import the accounts. That's important. It's not that you import the project and then Gerrit magically create the accounts. Absolutely not. Just imported the changes and it's doing an account lookup of account that already exist. So it could be, we need to see in the design document how we'll progress the discussion. It could well be that we will say maybe 3.8 will allow you to import users and groups.
Yeah, okay. Okay, because I think that will be needed, even because the fact is that if you import a project from one site to another, you'll stumble upon that because people will still, if the idea is migrating a repository from one place to another so that the users can continue to work, if you've defined the permissions for it on the repository, it needs to work either way, so that's an issue.
Now, one thing that is actually very important that he mentioned is that you know that the groups, the list of groups, is actually in REST meta config.
Yep.
So it means that you will need to be sure that those groups, they do already exist in the target. Otherwise, you won't be able to process the ACLs. Now, that is a very important point. Yeah, absolutely, because the ACLs may be meaningless on the new server. Yeah, so you need to make sure that that is addressed beforehand. In 3.8, of course, we'll have a design document talking about all that stuff. Right.
And of course, the final one is regarding the change number. It was really something that I found it really weird when things migrated to NoteDb. If now you have all the information on the project, why keep the change number connected?
I'm with you. I'm with you. So we did all this work to get rid of it. And then there was also a million these people say, why you guys want the projects? Well, it's so nice to say, give me change number 1.
If that was the case, it might as well have been something. Use the commit ID instead of using that strategy.
Exactly. And I believe everywhere in the documentation, it says that if you only use the change number, it's deprecated. And there was in a discussion in the mailing list, one guy that said, why don't we de-deprecate it? say, so we spent many, many years to get rid of it, and now we need to de-deprecate and do all the work we've done in past 6 years. No, let's get it done. And in 3.7, let's say we cannot remove it, of course, because we need to fill all the gaps. But maybe 3.8 or maybe 4.0, we can say, if you just do change number, it's not deprecated, it's not there. So you say invalid request. Yeah, so request to be done with project name, otherwise we don't serve the request. And actually, if you think about, it's normal in GitHub. So people may be complaining about Gerrit, oh, why do you need a change number? If you need a PR, why do you need the project number in GitHub, right? So why are you so surprised that we asked for the change number also in Gerrit, right?
Like in Atlassian Jira, you have project name and minus and issue number.